Hello guys, my name is Demi Wynn and I'm going to be presenting this video here to my professor, and it's just about an article that we were assigned and a few questions that were given at the end that I just wanted to go over a response to. And so the particular article for my international business course here is called Down with Dumping. And so it just kind of talks a little bit about dumping, some of the repercussions of it, some of the negatives of it, and things that happen as a result of dumping. So first off, I'm going to address like what is dumping in general. So I hadn't actually heard this term dumping before, taking this course and then going over it and reading it, through the particular chapter that we're learning about right now in class, and then having, this article assigned to us kind of gave me a little bit more insight as to what dumping is. And so from my understanding, and then, from what the book describes, dumping is when a country exports a mass amount of a product or good to to another domestic market, and they're able to sell it at a price that's being offered a lot less than that product is being offered in the domestic market, or they're just being able to sell it for a price that's lower than production. And so with that, we're going to discuss a little bit about the advantages, a little bit about the disadvantages, and then my response to some of the questions that were assigned at the end of this particular article. And so when like I said, I wasn't exposed to this term dumping, prior to this course. So I found this topic to be pretty interesting, and I just wanted to kind of do some of my own research to kind of figure out, an example of something current that could help me relate to the actual term of dumping. And something that I found, in a recent current event is Canada was actually dumping a good amount of lumber into the United States, and they are able to get this lumber, I believe, they're logging it off of government-owned land, so they're able to get it, I guess, for cheaper than whatever alternatives it is that they normally use to get lumber. So they're sending this lumber over to the U.S., and basically Trump threatened to get Canada to stop doing this by saying, hey, we're going to put a 20% tariff on you guys. And I'm not exactly sure. The article didn't state whether or not that tariff was followed through, but I think just the threat alone on such a large amount of lumber that was being brought over here, a 20% tariff would have been kind of a big deal. And so the threat, I think, alone was enough to kind of slow down that issue some. And so that's just kind of a recent example that I was able to find through doing some of my research. I think kind of day-to-day examples are probably electronics or maybe steel, or things that people can relate to, maybe a little bit better than lumber. But that's just something that I was able to to kind of find and kind of help me understand a little bit about the term, or the concept of dumping. And so some of the advantages of dumping, like why do other countries do this, what good actually comes of this. And so other countries do it because they're able to bring in a product, and they're able to sell it at a competitively lower price, and they're able to kind of, I guess, like saturate the market and kind of take over a certain industry. And so it's good for the country that's doing it. It kind of increases their market share, and it also, for us consumers, is able to lower the price of whatever good it is that they're selling, because we're able to get it for a much cheaper price than whatever is being offered to us here domestically. But now, unfortunately, with that, those few advantages, there are a pretty good amount of disadvantages. And so, for the domestic country in particular, it's going to hurt their industry, and it's going to hurt the producers that are making products in that particular industry in our, domestic country. It's going to lead to job loss, for locals in the domestic country that, maybe work for a particular plant, or, work in a particular industry that's producing this good. Because these other countries are being able to take up more market share, it's, reducing the amount of jobs and the amount of demand for those goods that, we're producing here domestically. And there's also going to be, obviously, some sort of retaliation issues with the country that is being dumped upon. Like I mentioned earlier with the lumber example, the U.S. basically wanted to say, hey, like if this doesn't cease to exist, we're gonna slap a tariff on this. And so with that, I think if a country catches another one in dumping and tariffs are placed there. I know the particular article down with dumping actually mentioned what did it say here? It actually mentioned that when anti-dumping tariffs charge, it's hard to get those tariffs to be it's hard to get those tariffs to be removed once they're charged. And so that's something that I thought was interesting, but I do believe is kind of understandable because I'm sure, once dumping occurs and there's proof of it, it's probably going to break the trust between those trade partners. And so with dumping, it's like well, this happens between different countries, and it's like what's actually done about it. And so there's a World Trade Organization that's called WTO, and they're kind of, I guess, just like the police that helps control, helps control and kind of govern and regulate trade among nations. And so, the particular article here, Downward Dumping, actually mentions that the WTO does allow dumping. And if a country is dumping upon another, they can't actually go after that particular company. All they can do is punish the government that regulates the rules, within that country. And so that's something that I found interesting, but I do believe is kind of understandable, with an organization that big that's in charge of, regulating, a majority of the nations and all of their, trade that goes on. That's understandable. But it did mention here in this, in the article Down with Dumping, that the WTO will take action if a country is able to prove that another country is dumping inside of their country. And so if they can prove that there's actually, a pretty good amount of, significant damage that's going on, to their domestic producers, and if the export price is, lower than, the product that's being offered domestically, then the WTO can go ahead and take action on anti-dumping there. And so just addressing some of the questions that were given at the end of this article, the first one was, people love finding a bargain on their favorite items while shopping. But few people would likely want those items made in the home market, which would create jobs, if it meant paying a higher price for them. Do you agree with this sentiment? If so, explain. So I definitely agree with this sentiment. I know when I'm out shopping, I know when family, friends, just a majority of consumers, they go after the sales, they look for the sales, the bargains, especially when it comes down to purchasing a product that's exactly the same, whether it be like an article of clothing or, a electronic item. If you can get it, at a different store from a different company, or if you can order it online, for a lower, sometimes maybe significantly lower price than what it's going for, why wouldn't you? People are, I know I'm about saving money. I know a majority of consumers, want to save money, especially when there's so many, different options that we have here in the U.S. to be able to purchase a variety of different products from a variety of different means. Even though people generally want to be able to support their local economy. They want unemployment to be down. At the end of the day, Americans love their Walmart. They love their Walmart, and they love being able to purchase, like smaller things, home items like like food and whatever else you use, for household items. Then clothing, and then more expensive things such as electronics or cars. At the end of the day, I do believe that people value a bargain over having an item sold here or having an item produced here in the home market, which would sometimes increase the price of that item. Is that the case for everyone? Definitely not, because I know a good marketing strategy for some local businesses or some bigger companies is made in America or produced locally or grown locally or locally sourced, and people will sometimes make that purchase of an item that's a little bit more pricey than what they could purchase elsewhere for cheaper because of that. But for the most part, I will agree with the statement that people definitely value the bargain. And then the next question after that follows up with, do you think that people from different cultures would respond differently to the above question? And if so, explain. And so, in response to that, I, yes, definitely believe that different cultures will respond differently by valuing items being made domestically in the home market and with job creation versus that bargain. Now, what kind of people culturally? I'm not sure that it will change so much based on like ethnic cultures, but I do think culturally, as far as financial and economic status, there will definitely be a lot more variation. So some consumers that are part of that upper middle or upper middle class or high class definitely value being able to purchase things of quality, or just for the sake of saying that they have that name brand thing, over purchasing a cheaper item. So someone that has a certain lifestyle preference, you know may be fine with purchasing like cowboy boots that are locally made by the mom and pop store next door, for $500-$600 versus going down to Cavender's and getting a similar type of boot, for less than half the price, just because they want to say like, oh, I wear boots from so and so, or these were custom made for me. And even though I agreed earlier with the first statement, for the first question that said people love finding a bargain on their favorite items while shopping, versus it being made here in the home market and us buying it for a higher price, there are instances where I think not only with your lifestyle preference or your economic status culturally, you'll end up buying a more expensive product. And those other instances, I believe, comes down sometimes to the product itself. I know for me, I actually am a competitive power lifter, and I purchase a variety of different equipment that I use while training or during meets, that range from things that go on my wrist to particular types of bags or particular types of clothing. One particular article that I use a lot while training, and it's probably the most expensive thing that I owned, is it's this weightlifting belt. And I know I can go down to Academy and purchase one, for maybe 30, $40, or I can get one online on Amazon that's a really good quality, better than I would get at Academy. But, it's purchased, somewhere foreign, and maybe spend like $100. But I actually have a belt that was made here in the U.S. by a particular company that manufactures all of their equipment here in the U.S., and it's substantially more expensive than what I could purchase online or maybe in a sporting goods store. But because I trust the quality of it, and because I really value the company and the fact that they are here in the United States, I have chosen and will continue to choose to purchase from them. So I think culturally, yes, people's lifestyle changes, or people's lifestyle preferences are definitely going to make a difference in how they respond to that first question. And for me, I still agree that people do value the bargain, most definitely. But I would say the caveats to that are going to pretend, or are going to be contingent on what it is that you're buying, and then where you stand financially to be able to afford to be able to buy those things that are more expensive domestically. Um, and so with that, I really enjoyed this article, down with dumping, and learning about kind of what is dumping, what are the implications of dumping, why it's done. Like I said, it's prior to to having to read about it and having this assigned to me, I wasn't that familiar with the term itself. I knew it was something that definitely occurred, but didn't realize that there was a particular term for it. And then now, as a consumer, it's definitely kind of opened my eyes into thinking about what items do I want to purchase that may be more expensive than what I could purchase, somewhere else. Um, because I definitely would say that I come from a family that's definitely part of the working class. I would consider myself, like I'm still a young college student who will, you know, eventually be a part of that same, working class, and I want to definitely be able to say that I support my local economy. That I support local small businesses, and products that are made here, within the U.S. But like anything, it's kind of hard to do. I think ethically and morally, when we want to believe that we are supporting our domestic home market here as much as we can. But I do understand why most times people will go after the bargains and will go after purchasing things online versus maybe supporting their local business or those local or the local domestic companies that are producing goods here. So that's all I have to say about this particular article, and I hope I've adequately answered the questions that were assigned, and I've really enjoyed learning about dumping, and I'm really looking forward to what it is that we're going to be doing for our next assignment. So thank you so much for listening, and then this concludes my video.